back to the Legally Judgy podcast, episode 4. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Alexa.
So, on today's episode, we are finally talking about Dave Chappelle. And if you listen to our intro episode, you know how I have been stalking Alexa to talk about this.
So creepy.
For months, but it's really good. Okay, so real brief background. So Dave, of course, formerly had the Chappelle show on Comedy Central. Comedy Central ultimately sold the show like much later on, I guess in the past couple years actually, to Netflix and HBO Max against his wishes. And so for reasons that we'll talk about today, he somehow got like both of the streamers to pull the show from their platforms.
That's the power I strive to have in life.
Like, talk about boss moves. You got
Amazing.
Two of the biggest streamers to pull down a show that they paid for.
Yeah. No money's exchanged for that. Nothing.
I'm here for it. I just want to have as much power as Chappelle does one day.
I want to have Netflix on speed dial and be like, do what I want.
Yeah, take my shit down or put my shit up because I don't have anything to pull down just yet. So,
right.
You know.
And give me $1 billion.
Maybe make me famous first. Thanks, Reed.
Shout out.
So that's what we're talking about today. But before we get to Dave Chappelle, Alexa, what's new?
You know, we have to have our check-in, girl. All right. So, speaking of Netflix, we watched The Night Stalker.
Yes.
4 episodes of sheer terror. Yes. Let me tell you. Okay. Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah.
That won't leave.
Are you gonna? Is this like gonna be? What's this thing called? Like when you give it away? Are we? Spoiler alert! Is this gonna be a spoiler alert for our listeners, or?
I guess a spoiler alert on who is Alexa.
Okay, fine, go. I should know.
Okay, Richard Ramirez is one of the serial killers I find most intriguing because he's LA based, right? And so it's close to home.
It's close to home, yeah.
Which makes it scarier but more intriguing because I feel like when I read about serial killers, usually it's like in the past or it's somewhere else, so it doesn't feel real. Mm-hmm. And there's something a lot more terrifying about a serial killer who walked the same streets that I'm like, oh, I know where that is.
1,000%. And not that long ago either.
No, the 80s?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like around the time we were born.
Yeah. My parents remember and have stories about being scared to go to sleep at night.
It's crazy.
Because Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, is out killing people.
I'm really glad, though, that this is not like an unsolved mystery because I really would never have been able to watch that. Like I actually would have just been taking Adderall and staying up all night every night.
Totally.
Like
I would
hoping
too.
that he didn't come to my front door / window.
Absolutely. That's why I hate when there's some like the Zodiac killer.
Oh yeah.
They don't know who.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Hopefully enough time's passed and that guy just naturally died of something, of time, you know, but yeah. So I was scared, but I had known the story, right? Because my parents, like I said, my mom had to help my grandma when they were growing up.
Okay.
There was another report that he had hit a city close to them.
Okay.
So my grandma was like, oh, we got to take these broomsticks and saw them in half. And then we used the broomsticks to like double bar the windows.
So badass.
Right? So anyway, my beloved wife was like, where are the broomsticks at, right? Because she was so scared. She's checking the closets. She's looking under our bed. Our bed has like 3 inches, by the way. We're like 3 inches off the floor. She's looking like, okay, first of all, Richard Ramirez was caught in the 80s.
He was skinny, though. He could fit under a 3-inch bed.
Maybe. I mean, he's dead now.
He was very frail.
There's
okay,
that
fine,
small.
Fair.
Is that the spoiler alert you were referring?
Well
so
played.
I guess his spirit could fit under there.
Listen.
Anyway, that was my week. So very terrified. I'm going to have to watch some cartoons.
Show. I would highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it yet. It's, as Alexa said, quite terrifying, especially if you're in California. But I think if you're not, it's so good.
Yeah. If you're into like the murder docuseries genre, definitely recommend. It's only 4 episodes too.
Yeah.
So easy to binge watch.
Yeah. Definitely like an evening's worth of watching.
But anyway, so that was my terrifying week. How was yours?
Mine was actually, it's optimistic. Let's call it that. I feel like I'm ready for the pandemic to be over as everybody else is. And I feel like now that Biden and Kamala have been in, office for a little bit, I'm feeling like we're on a good path. And I think the states are starting to get back under control. And I say that all to say that just means that there's a ton of pressure on me to get my post-pandemic bod ready. Because I can't come out of the pandemic looking crazy. So in anticipation for that moment and for post-pandy summer, I had post-pandy summer. I've been like doing a real solid mix of Soul Cycle, eating leaves, and maybe like some crying every now and then because I feel like when I cry, my appetite goes away. So I think it's working out so far.
So you're losing water weight.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm not picky. I don't care which weight I lose. I'm just looking to lose a weight.
A weight.
A weight.
A gram of weight.
Just something.
I think you look good, and I don't like to give out compliments.
Oh, I appreciate
So
that.
you look fine. I mean,
Fine.
Did I just backtrack?
Fine.
I don't notice a difference.
You look all right.
Is that
You've
bad?
been crying too much.
Are we getting worse and worse? I mean, your eyes look like shit, but the rest of you.
Wow, thanks. This is so sweet of you. It's fine. I'll work on my bod. I've got some time. I mean, in the interim, I don't know.
I'll encourage.
Okay, that's
Whatever
fine.
you need.
I'll start texting you for motivation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm the person to go to for that kind of thing because, I'm not the most, how should we put it, dedicated to my fitness.
No, you're also quite sarcastic and a little judgy. I mean, which isn't... I mean,
Judgy?
we're meant to be judgy, right?
Me?
But you're a bit sarcastic, sometimes a little biting in your humor, and I think that may be where you and Chappelle relate, because it's obviously not on the money. So, sorry. Was that harsh?
If you're saying that we're relatable and there's a chance that I could get millions of dollars one day just for my biting personality, I'll take it.
Okay, fine.
I'm going to twist that shit.
All right, we'll see.
I'm going to say thank you.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. We've got time.
So, speaking of...
So Chappelle, our guy Chappelle. So where do we start with him? He is one of the most famous comedians of our time, and our time being, us as 30-something-year-olds. Let's just leave it at that.
Our time? We're doing a fairy tale?
I don't know.
Okay, go on.
Back in our day, there was Dave Chappelle. And so I think that he'll likely probably be one of the best comedians in history.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the thing with him, of course, as with most, if not all, comedians, a couple controversies, right? A couple things that some subjects he should not joke about anymore. Like, he really likes to go hard on the trans community. I'm like, enough.
It's not good.
Enough, Chappelle.
I don't love it. Yeah. Okay.
No, let's not.
Yeah.
Not groups of people that are fighting for equal rights, but not what the podcast is about. Just want to acknowledge that. But yeah, you're right. I think definitely one of the best comedians of all time, at least for the Chappelle show, right? That was something that hadn't been done in the way that he did it.
Yeah. I mean, so it's crazy, right? So he's been a comedian for a while now. I mean, leading up to now, he's now won... latest I checked, at least, he's gotten like 4 Emmys, 3 Grammys, a Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, which is presented by the John F. Kennedy Center, and I think that's supposed to be one of like America's highest comedy honors. So
super fancy. I know. I was reading that Richard Pryor was one of the first recipients.
Whoa, okay.
I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, what? Not live under a rock.
I hear he's pretty big.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like the guy that most stand-ups like look to, revere, right, as being the guy.
For sure.
They're synonymous, stand-up and Richard Pryor, so he won the awards. That's saying something.
Yeah, I mean, so he's gotten some awards. He's obviously done, or maybe not obviously, but he's done other things besides comedy. He's done directing, he's produced, he's written things, he's acted, but I mean... without a shadow of a doubt, he's best known for his stand-up performances in the sketch comedy that was built into Chappelle's show, which again was on Comedy Central from about 2003 to 2006. And I mean, to add to the fact that he was like the star of that show as the comedian, he was also really the creator and the brains behind it, and he was an EP or executive producer. So, I mean, listen, when I think back at like the Chappelle show era, I think if you didn't see it, you definitely weren't cool in high school. And I know it was a bit racy, right? Like everything was not appropriate. It wasn't all above board. But I mean, I was definitely like sneaking to watch that show in the middle of the night, like waiting until my mom passed out. And I would like tiptoe downstairs and like try and catch it so I could be up on like all the jokes by the time I got to school the next day.
So you cared about being cool? That's so weird. I would have not thought that about you.
I mean, listen, I had to start somewhere, especially since I was, as we talked about, wearing Hollister and Uggs. I had to have something to come in with, and so I felt like, at the very least, my knowledge of the Chappelle show would help.
This gave you that edge, huh?
Yeah, for
You're
sure.
like, yeah, I wear Hollister, but have you seen the latest Chappelle show episode?
Listen, I could come and I could quote Rick James and whoever else he was talking about. I vividly remember one summer at cheer camp.
Cheer camp.
Yeah, I was a cheerleader. I was actually captain of the varsity cheer team. So let's put some respect on my previous skills.
Excuse me. I didn't know that I was in the presence of high school royalty here.
Greatness. You're welcome.
Excuse me.
So anyways, back at cheer camp while I was the varsity captain.
One time at band camp.
We sat in our room one night and just like redid all of the Chappelle show skits with like somebody's video camera, and it was probably one of the best times I've had like as a child. You know, because this was obviously pre-drinking.
All the sketches?
Just whatever we thought of.
Were you the...
One of my friends,
some white powdered donut,
was Rick James because she had like huge curly hair and she was absolutely hilarious. So it was just we had a good time.
Those are good memories.
Did you watch?
I caught flashes. No, I was nerdy because my parents were super strict about what I watched as well.
Okay.
But I was less able to like sneak and watch.
You weren't a badass. Okay.
I always wanted to. And the funny thing about growing up with stricter parents, or let me back up, they were strict with me, the oldest. My younger brother, sister, don't give a fuck.
Get away with everything.
They're probably like, here, we bought you the complete DVD set of the Chappelle show.
They probably have their own Richard Ramirez lifestyles. Yeah. The younger ones always get away with murder.
Yeah. I'm getting caught. And I'm like stealing cookies.
I empathize with you.
So I would always feel behind actually going to school. And then I just remember like, especially the cool like varsity football guys being like, I'm Rick James, bitch. Like in the hallway. And I'm like, what? What's going on, guys? Who's Rick James?
Who's Rick
and
James?
Why are you calling someone? Why do you have a potty mouth? You know,
wow, I hope that you weren't that person. It would be terrible.
I don't think I was, but let's embellish here,
okay.
right? So I really wanted to. Mom didn't let me. I mean, love my mom, but she also was like, don't watch Power Rangers. There's too much violence.
Wow. Okay.
So that's my upbringing.
All right. So Alexa wasn't clearly up on the Chappelle show, but it's fine. I mean, it really ended quite abruptly.
A little too abruptly.
A little abrupt. So I actually love talking about people's meltdowns. You guys heard me talk about Britney Spears, 2 episodes ago now. But Dave had a little tad mental breakdown and walked out in like 2005 before finishing the season, before finishing the 3rd season. And so he said it was due to poor working conditions. But the best part is, I mean, for me at least, before he walked out, he like called Prince to be like, hey, Prince, what do you think about what's happening in my life right now?
That's how you call Prince. Hey, Prince.
And I guess Prince was supportive, and rest in peace, Prince. I love Prince. My family is huge Prince fans. But can you imagine, like, Dave Chappelle, you are not Prince, and I'm sure whatever your poor working conditions are like, definitely way below his standards. And so he was probably like, that is truly the ghetto.
Right. But Prince, I love that relationship, right? It's so random. Prince and Dave Chappelle. Imagine them just hanging out on I know you couldn't text back then, but imagine what that would look like back then.
I think you could text in 2005, bro.
I don't think so. I had a Nokia brick, and my parents, I had 0 text messaging, but the World Wide Web, remember when you'd accidentally like open the World Wide Web and you'd be like, oh my God, it's about to charge me like $5,000? That's
I had
what
a
I meant.
sidekick around then. So
you had a sidekick?
I was one of those girls. I mean, it doesn't at all make sense.
You did wear Hollister. I thought you were joking.
Oh no, I'm very serious. I had a sidekick. I think I saw it in I think it came out in like Bow Wow's music video. No, it was Kelly and Nelly.
Kelly and Nelly.
It's fine. We can move on past that.
You lucky bitch. No, I had a brick Nokia, 15 minutes prepaid. My dad was like, use it for emergencies only. And that's the only time I got to
So you weren't texting. I mean, in reality, Prince probably wasn't texting either. Somebody was texting on his behalf because he was Prince. But so somebody on behalf of Prince texted Dave Chappelle and was like, get out. Get the fuck out. That is the pits. You deserve better, man.
Okay, look. Let's just say worst case, working conditions is what? He gets a tiny little trailer and maybe he just gets water and sugar cubes.
They probably didn't pick the right color M&Ms out of the bowl.
Okay, let's go with that. Worst case, you get the brown M&Ms.
I mean, when you're a star, that's a big fuck up.
No, it's not, Nicole. You know why? Because he was reportedly offered $50 million to do seasons 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. Those working conditions were so bad that you had to say, you know what, $50 million? No thanks, because the AC broke in my trailer for 30 minutes. What working conditions were so bad that he walked away from $50 million?
There's literally... I'm trying to think of some jobs that would be two below me for $50 million. And I'm like, okay, I haven't gotten there yet.
If someone was like, your job is to buy me Raisin Bran and take out all the raisins from every bowl of cereal, right? I'm thinking of the most tedious thing that somebody could want.
Done. For $50 million.
That sounds like a great job.
How many boxes?
Thank you. What kind of color gloves do you want me to wear while I, I'm sanitizing and making sure the raisins are taken out?
Insane.
The M&Ms, you don't like brown? How much to color it with edible paint?
Yeah,
I'll do whatever you want.
A few things that I wouldn't do for $50 million, especially right now, but that's fine. So Dave apparently had far more money than that. He didn't need that last 50. So, he walks away from the show. And in tandem with this show, right? So he obviously, to start the show, he entered into an agreement with Comedy Central. And in the agreement, I presume at least, that he signed away all of his rights to the show and the show's name in perpetuity, which basically means that, like,
perpetuity.
I know. Now I'm using fancy words.
So
perpetuity means forever and ever. And so he would have given away the rights to use all of those things. And so, at some point he kind of comes back and says that he was young when he entered into this agreement. He was like, I was only 28 years old. I was broke and I was expecting a baby when I signed. So I just wasn't sure, like, what was happening.
No, fair. Yeah, the rights were signed. Okay, I just have to say.
You don't believe it?
Look, do I think that he was a legal expert and knew contract law? No. But also, by this point, he had done quite a few things, right? Like, he was a regular guest on several late-night TV shows. He co-wrote Starred in Half-Baked, right? Cult following. And then he had a spot in You've Got Mail, which was huge. So I'm not saying that he was the star of You've Got Mail, but he had to have talent reps good enough to get him into that film, right?
Yeah,
and
fair.
He, by that point, also had a HBO special for one of his stand-ups, Killing Them Softly. So I'm not saying that he'd know all the contract stuff, but I'm just saying don't paint yourself as somebody who is up and coming. It's your first big break, huge break.
It's
right?
definitely
This
not
put him on the map,
realistic.
but
It's not realistic. I can't imagine that he was entering into agreements for all of those shows and cameos and whatever the case without somebody reviewing them. Like, it's not just a casual piece of paper to sign. It's not like terms of use when you get on fucking Facebook. Like, it's serious enough where you would think he probably had an entertainment attorney, but maybe he had like a junior one since he was junior in his career. I don't know. I'm not defending it. I do think he's dragging it a little bit to be like, I was so broke that I didn't know that I was giving away my rights to the show and the name of the show, but who knows?
And I mean, we're going to get into it, but also it's not necessarily uncommon to give these rights away.
Yeah.
When you sign with studios.
Fair. Well,
Right.
okay.
So we'll get to it in the legal breakdown.
yeah, we'll come
So
back to that
excited here.
I know. I love Chappelle and I love this whole storyline. So, okay, we talked about it. Chappelle walks off the show. He complains about how the contract's not fair. And then in the interim, he goes to spend some time in the motherland, aka Africa, and gets super buff. And I imagine him getting, I saw some pictures after the fact when he had first gotten back to America. And I imagine that he fulfilled all of your dreams of just being like prison buff.
I know. Like my man, The Rock.
Yeah.
No, he had some biceps on him. I saw a picture because I was like, what did he look like? I didn't really remember. So I had to refresh my memory, and I was like, holy shit.
And he was quite skinny when he left, so he was
Yeah.
really, like, pumping the iron out there.
Yeah, he was eating steaks 50 times a day. That's a lot of work.
I mean, maybe not steak, because he said while he was there that the millions that he had in the bank were basically not enough to keep him comfortable, so he decided to come back and do more shows.
Right. So he got buff off of dreams of becoming rich.
I mean,
The poor guy. I wonder how much he had, though.
he said he had millions.
And that's the irony of it all, right? Because he's millions. Let's just say a couple million. I wanted to say that there was some hints at 10, but I think he's been very, like, coy about it, right? He doesn't want to say because people will probably hate on him for it. And he doesn't have to. But you walk away from 50 million, which, again, I know, poor working conditions. Then you leave for a little bit to get out. And then I think he was only away for a couple weeks. Someone
It was
said
like
that,
months or something.
Was it months?
It was a little bit of time.
Maybe he came back like a different time or something. Because I saw an interview where he said that it was 2, but I was like, no way. Because, of course, he comes back buff, so that doesn't even make sense.
Super buff. He was ready to go.
The story keeps changing.
Whatever. He's ready to rip. So he gets back. Okay, so at some point, there's like some quiet periods, right? I mean, he's, gone, then he comes back. But during that time, or during some period of time, Viacom CBS, now Viacom CBS, at least post-merger, owns Comedy Central. So they decide to license out the Chappelle show to Netflix and HBO Max. And so essentially a licensing deal it basically means that Viacom is saying, we own this thing. We're going to continue to own it, but we'll let you use this thing for a certain number of years if you pay us, X amount of dollars. So basically, Netflix and HBO Max had paid some undisclosed amount of money. We know that it's millions to have the Chappelle show on both of their streamers for some period of time. So, and we're not really clear how long the licensing period was. So I mean, this will become more relevant as we get further into the story, but just keep that in mind, I guess, as we go along. So Dave hears that Viacom has licensed the show to Netflix and HBO. And so what he decides to do is give old Reed Hastings, who was the CEO of Netflix, a call to be like, hey, bro, I heard about this deal. I'm not here with the shits. Take it down now.
That's verbatim. That's exactly how it said.
I just had, when I saw that news alert, I was like, okay, so do you have Reed Hastings on speed dial? Like, you just casually called the CEO of Netflix?
Right. I mean, if he's able to get this pulled and we don't know what else went into the talks, right? It's all very hush-hush.
Yeah.
But I guess you do, right? Because he has a deal with Netflix that's worth $60 million, I see, by many reports, for a handful of stand-up specials.
Does anybody want to give us $60 million?
I'll take
$200.
$200. Am I lowballing myself here? Like,
probably about right.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I think that, right, you have this star. What an awkward relationship. What are you going to do? You just paid this guy $60 million for a handful of comedy specials. He's upset. And this is where entertainment relationships really come into play.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into. But I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
That's some power, man. So then, after this on his Instagram, he posts an 18-minute long monologue.
What the fuck?
Yeah, he's not happy. So he labels it Unforgiven. It's so dramatic. So he has 1.7 million followers on Instagram. And the last I checked, this video had over 6 million views.
I'm sorry. Question. Who the fuck was watching an 18-minute long monologue on fucking Instagram? I can barely make it through Reels half the time. Those are like 2 minutes long.
I know. It's like IGTV. I think it's like a whole nother thing, right? Because Reels is shorter clips. He had to go IGTV on you. And
for 18 minutes?
He was unhappy, Nicole.
So you just whined like a fucking baby for 18 minutes on Instagram? Also, let's talk about the timeline of this, right? It was November. We were mid-pandemic. Like, talk about tone deaf. Read the fucking room. Nobody's crying for you and your millions over your 18-minute monologue.
I know. But of course I watched it. Okay, I didn't watch the whole thing. It was a little tough. But
so you didn't watch it either?
I scanned. I perused.
Okay.
I took a glance
a little fast forward. Got it.
It was a little tough, right? But I was so intrigued because I was like, wow, this is crazy, right? So you already called Reed Hastings up.
Yeah.
You're like, that's not enough. I'm going to go to the public. I'm going to get people all riled up.
Yep.
I'm going to go to my Instagram. I'm going to post this thing. And that's where my mind is blown because it's the power of having a public perception.
Yeah.
And if you sell yourself in a certain way, you can get companies to do whatever, right?
Yeah.
So he's saying, I love some of the things that he was saying, right? He goes, I found out that these people were streaming my work and they never had to ask me or they never have to tell me. And if you are fucking streaming that show, you're fencing stolen goods. And he goes, these contracts are crazy. You should hear the terminology they say. To use your name and likeness in perpetuity throughout the universe. And I'm like laughing, right? Because I'm like, yeah, those words do suck. He's like, who the fuck could possibly know what that means? Nobody does.
They're all also very Googleable. Like, I'm sure he knew what universe meant.
That's a tongue
I'm sure
twister.
he knows what name and likeness are. So really, he was just confused by perpetuity.
Forever. You taught me. That means forever.
Forever, ever, and ever, ever.
That was beautiful.
Andre 3000. God, always. He's always in my heart.
That was a sweet moment.
Back to Dave.
Yeah, okay. So name and likeness. Speaking as people who are in the entertainment industry, it's really common, name and likeness, right? Perpetuity, we talked about, that means forever, throughout the universe. That's a stupid saying. But it basically means everywhere. But name and likeness is what it sounds like, right? We have the right to use your name.
Yep.
And your likeness, like you, right? The essence that is you in promoting your show.
Yeah. Yep.
Which kind of seems reasonable to me. And I know maybe I'm a little biased because I'm in the industry, but I'm like, in order to promote a show, you have to be able to use the person's name, especially the name of the show is his last name.
Right.
So we have to use it.
Yeah.
Also, you said you have a lawyer. They should look at that.
I mean, he said he was young and broke, so guess his lawyer doesn't know what perpetuity means either. I don't fucking know.
Right.
Well, so he obviously has this 18-minute cry fest on Instagram. And so after all of this, of course, not like the Beehive, because the Beehive is far stronger and more dynamic. But he's got a mini hive of Dave followers who, threw their hands up in the air and was saying it was so unfair. And, you know, they really, like, rallied behind him. And I'm sure they were, you know, invading all of the comments for HBO and Netflix. So Netflix decides to take the show down right before Thanksgiving. So that's, like, what, days after he posts this video?
Yeah, it's, like, less than a week. He posted on November 24th.
Okay. So, and I think at the end, I was looking it up, they had only aired it for a month. So, I mean, I don't even know if they got their money's worth at all from that month.
Right.
And then,
so crazy.
Yeah. So Netflix pulls it down before Thanksgiving. HBO then takes it down December 31st. And I just love that they, like, let it sit for that extra month to hope that all of the controversy would lead to people coming back. I'm obviously, you know, presuming that this is the case, but I would suspect that they left it up there for an extra month to get more viewers and get whatever, like, value they could out of having, you know, paid that licensing fee to get the streams from people.
Right. Knowing Netflix took it down. And then my favorite thing when I was doing the research was that Chappelle claimed that his issue was more personal with HBO because he had originally pitched the Chappelle show to them and they turned him down.
Because of revenge.
Yeah, allegedly stating, he kept saying this right too, that they told him when they turned him down, what do we need you for? And so I feel like he's like extra like F you guys, you know?
Yeah. This was a glow up season for him. He was getting revenge. He was like, oh, who needs who now, bitches?
Yeah. And he's so happy with Netflix, right? Because again, they're paying him $60 million, so he's not going to bash them too much. But he's going to be like, HBO,
yeah,
I remember you guys. And I was like, how's HBO going to respond to this, right? Because you have this guy who makes an 18-minute clip. HBO's chief content officer, Casey Bloys, when asked about this, I think they were trying to dodge, and finally, I think he got cornered. That's what I imagine. He's like, "Oh no, I got caught." So his statement was like, "It's a very unique and specific and emotional issue he's got," which I thought was hilarious.
Emotional.
Yeah, and then he goes, "At the end of the year, we're going to honor his request and take the show down."
At the end of the year?
That's what he was
we need to get these last couple dollars out, so just hang tight, Chappelle. We got you, boy.
Yeah, and then this is where, like, I'll feel for Chappelle a little bit because I'm like, you call him emotional? Like, okay, it wasn't in the contract. Again, we're about to get into it about those claims, but calling it emotional.
It's a little condescending.
Right? And I'm like, isn't it emotional that you waited another month then? That's emotional.
It's also quite triggering because I feel like people use that term a lot when women are expressing what they think. And so, not that he understands that because he's obviously not a woman and talks a fair amount of shit about women, but I'm like, ooh, that is kind of, I don't really like when people describe things that, I mean, listen, does it strike a chord for him personally? Sure, but it's also, you know, his name and his image, and if he walked away from it and doesn't feel like he got paid a fair amount, then, like, it's not really that emotional.
Yeah, you're just trying to get your cut.
Get your coins.
That's also, I'm like, are you guys, we'll see, but I'm like, are you guys going to try to redo that negotiation and give Chappelle a cut this time, or are you just going to leave it dead in the water? We'll see. Anyway.
Well, okay. Well, in any event, he was successful somehow in getting both streamers to take the show down quite quickly, within like a month and a half longest, I guess, on the HBO side. And so, I guess to your point, like, query what happens next, but, like, let's break down the legal issues. Like, what's actually happening here outside of the facts?
Right. The most interesting thing about this is it's like a legal issue, right? Because Chappelle even acknowledged that it was perfectly legal. Like he said that, but he said that it basically doesn't make it right. So really interesting. So like, what is going on here, right? So Dave is alleging that Viacom, CBS licensed the show without paying him or letting him know. And still said it was unfair. So even though things are unfair in life, doesn't mean you can sue, right? So where does that leave us?
I mean, I think it's interesting when you think about it. So, I mean, obviously, like, any time an agreement or a negotiation happens, you have to look at it through the lens of, like, when it was being signed or done. And so if the show started in 2003, let's say he signed the agreement in, like, 2002 latest, because, you know, it takes a second to produce things. And so, you know, when they entered into that agreement, I presume that none of these streamers really existed. Like, I mean, we know, right?
Yeah,
we actually know that Netflix didn't exist then, HBO Max didn't exist then.
YouTube didn't, by the way.
Right.
Not involved here, but I'm just like to really set it
to, like,
up
drill in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so because of that, like, I mean, when they wrote the agreement, they didn't know that these things were going to happen. So I think about it actually, and I rarely side with like the companies of it all because they're obviously so big and powerful. But I think in fairness to them, they couldn't have known that these streamers were going to be in business and that they would have ultimately been licensing out the show. So how would they have even been able to predict and then put in a contract to say like, hey, if we ever license it out to a streamer, we'll pay you more money? I'm not really sure what that would look like.
Right. And that's why streamers really changed the name of the game for the entertainment industry, right? On multiple levels, but including contracts, to know that, okay, now we have to account for, like in our current contracts, the fact that new things will exist in the future that we can't even contemplate at this moment. So let's just put a bunch of jargon in there and hope it covers us, right? But backing up for a second, it's not uncommon that studios get all rights in a TV show. Yeah. Right? Because you think about it, and to your point, I also rarely side with the big corporations because I feel sorry for them outside. It's like a David and Goliath situation. But here, it's like, okay, well, we're the ones taking the financial risk in making your show. And in turn, you give us the rights and we'll exploit it. We'll do our best to market it. And that is that. Yeah. And in the contracts themselves, there's oftentimes royalties that are paid to the artist in turn, right? So this is what we're getting at, where usually now contracts will say, and if we, for any way we can exploit the TV show or the movie, you're going to get a cut, right? Which is basically, it's a cut. There's all these fancy terms for it, but you're going to get a cut of it. And I think at the end of the day, if Chappelle had a cut of this, even if it was a small cut, maybe, I feel like it probably would have made him feel better. And so...
Yeah, so I think that just goes to say that this is not, in our perspective, I think this is not really a legal issue. It's not really a matter of like somebody breaching or, violating a contract. It really feels more of like him claiming that artists are mistreated. And I think this is like so much more of a relationship thing. And, sometimes relationships and the PR of it all take precedence over or are more important than the actual law and the contract behind the thing.
Yes, and that is, I think, one of the biggest learning lessons I had when I moved into the entertainment industry was realizing actually how sometimes useless the contracts are. Oh, yeah. Because the relationships take over, right? For sure. Like when shit hits the fan, for lack of a better word, rarely are you going into your contract and you're like, well, according to section 5.2, subsection B,
Well, in fairness, we try that. As the lawyers, we will try to be like, can we just tell you what section 5 says?
Yeah.
And you're like, shut the fuck up.
Who are you? Get out of it. Go back to the little broom closet that is legal, right?
Unless you work at Bravo and they're looking for the lawyers for shows, but everywhere else.
Yeah. True. So, they're more like, that's when relationships take hold. They're like, let me get on the phone. Let's work this out, right? Because it's a small world and you don't want to burn bridges, and reputation is everything. Yeah. Right? Especially he posted an 18-minute long video. People get all up in arms. They don't really know otherwise. They're going to listen to him. And then it's going to be the giant Netflix, the giant HBO, poor Chappelle, right? So it's the story you can create, and that is leverage.
Well, I think it's also you've got all your fucking, you've got your subscribers and your consumers in your comments, like, just losing their shit, being like, your mom's a fucking bitch. Why don't you take Chappelle's thing down? Like, you don't understand what we go through. And so you like scroll these comments and you're so entertained. But on the company side, I can imagine they're like, fuck, man. Yeah, we got to pull this shit.
This is not good. No matter what. This is not, even if it's incorrect, we got to cave. We gotta, this is a PR, call the PR team quick. And Olivia Pope?
These studios are also like too smart. Like, they're not gonna like Kim Kardashian the shit and delete the post that they put up where all the comments are happening. They're like, right, we just gotta ride this out for a couple days and hope it goes away. Right. I don't know.
And this also, like, taking a quick tangent here, it kind of sucks because there are instances where some people are underpaid. Yeah. Right? And it kind of sucks. Like, I was reading that Monique is suing Netflix, actually. She's alleging that she's getting paid less than white comedians of, quote, similar stature. So she was offered $500,000 for a 2017 stand-up special. But her filing cites that tens of millions were reportedly paid to Amy Schumer, Ricky Gervais, Dave Chappelle, and a couple others, right? So it's crazy to think about. And for me, I'm like, it's pretty undeniable that people of color, especially women of color, and especially Black women, are underpaid compared to most people in
for
the
sure
world, right?
1,000%. I think I've obviously got experience and I'm sure testifies to that, but I also think there has to be some amount of like reasonableness to this all. And like, I love Monique. I grew up watching the Parkers, and like, you know, she's definitely got acclaimed fame in her own right, and she's been in a lot of other movies, but you also just have to like read the room. You're not, your fan base is not Dave Chappelle's fan base. It's not Amy Schumer's fan base, who's now been in, you know, box office movies. So like, yeah, there, of course, 1,000% people of color and women of color are, you know, not earning what they're owed. But in Monique's instance, I was like, okay, sis, like, I don't think that people know you. Like, the young folk don't know you that way.
Wow, we're old.
Yeah,
the young folk.
I know.
Gen Z. No, but it's true. And I think it's a bit of a slippery slope. It's a blurry line because we want people to get paid what's equitable, but we also have to account for what you said, right? Monique she's not the same, for better or for worse. Even Amy Schumer, right? She still has a huge following. She's still very popular, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But I think hopefully the moral of the story here, even though it's pretty clear that there's no contract breach or anything like that, that the studio's powers to hold people, to get rights, to pay less than what the artist is owed is kind of dwindling. I think we're heading in that direction because of social media. You're more aware of things. Even talking about this now, hopefully more people are aware of how this stuff works so they can advocate for themselves a little bit better. So it'll be really interesting to see where things go.
I mean, Dave, if you need an attorney, you can hit Alexa and I up.
Yeah, we'll do
in all
it.
honesty, we know how to draft shit so that it basically says, like, no matter what happens, if you sell this to a busboy or a fucking studio, like, you're going to get a cut, my friend.
We'll make sure you get that
should have
cut,
called
sir.
us.
In perpetuity throughout the universe.
Holler at us.
Heretofore, I'm like trying to think of notwithstanding the foregoing.
Wow. We're getting dorky.
We know all the words.
So, I mean, Dave, we're here for you. Hit up Nicole and Alexa, Legally Judgy. What up?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's our official.
That's our tagline.
Yeah. All right, so where are we now?
Okay, so we talked about it. You know, Netflix and HBO Max pulled the show down. Ultimately, it's going to live on Viacom CBS's new streamer. I mean, they've got CBS All Access, but they're making a new one called Paramount Plus, and it'll be on there. So
many streamers.
I know.
How are we going to keep up with all these monthly subscriptions?
I'm not going to. I'm just going to keep asking my parents for their login.
Okay, that sounds right.
I like the free lifestyle. I just feel like there's going to be a point in time at which I have to stop using their logins, but we're not there yet.
Do you?
I think so.
I say you take it for all they got.
All right, I'm fine with that.
Look,
This
we
is
have
the
no
least I can
morals.
get.
This is not a show about morals.
It's the least I can do for me.
All right, we're legally judgy here. This is where we're going to keep it. Okay, so we'll see what happens financially with Viacom, right? Because I'm sure HBO, Netflix are like, we pulled it. We want our money back. But also not Viacom's fault either. So TBD, and I don't think they're going to announce it because...
No, it'll definitely be a private settlement, if anything. But I would be so curious to know, like, if they're going to get... If they, being Netflix and HBO, will get any money back from Viacom, or maybe they're going to... I mean, nothing is... I can't think of anything on Viacom CBS that compares to Chappelle's show in terms of having like a young fan base, but maybe they'll swap something else in and be like, you can use this instead if you want, since you lost the time on that one. I'm not sure.
That's again where we talk about those relationships are going to come through because studios are always doing business with each other.
Or maybe they, to your point, they go back and they like sign an amendment to the original agreement with Chappelle, and they're like, hey, we're going to license this out. Like, here's a cut for you.
Chappelle's going to post a 19-minute long video.
Oh, God.
I love HBO. I love Netflix.
I love Viacom CBS. Everybody go watch.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, good for him. Well, I mean, okay, he's not doing bad. He's definitely still making the Netflix money, like you said. I know he bought some fire station in Ohio and is like turning that into a comedy house.
Okay.
So I'm definitely not losing any sleep for him and his money tonight.
Yeah. Well.
All right. So your favorite part?
My favorite
Sentencing.
part.
Time to sentence Dave Chappelle. What do you got for him?
Okay. Love the guy. Mm-hmm. He didn't do anything criminal.
Yeah.
So we're going to lighten the sentence, but
Okay.
he was a fucking crybaby.
For sure.
So 2 years. That's my sentence.
2 years is reasonable.
2 years, right? Just stop being a baby.
Okay. I mean, he just has to like learn some lessons while he's there. So let's talk about his prison personality. Like, what do we think is going to get him through the days?
I think what I hope, he just kind of goes into all the different characters he's played on his sketch show.
Okay.
From one moment to the next.
So he's Rick James and he's the KKK.
Yep. All
Then
of a
he's a
sudden,
crackhead.
bam, bam.
Then he's
bam,
Prince.
Bam.
That's
bam.
dangerous.
No, that's safety. No one's going to mess with him. He's going to be a lunatic in prison.
Or he ends up in solitary confinement because they're worried that he's literally a fucking psycho.
Then he can think about not being a crybaby. It's only 2 years.
In solitary, I just want to say, FYI, I do not believe in solitary confinement, so this is just Alexa here.
FYI, this is all jokes.
Okay, all right. I mean, we'll see. I'm sure he'll be, crawling around the prison, whining about how he doesn't have enough money and saying that life isn't fair. I'm sure that'll garner a ton of support.
Donations, please. Donations.
Maybe cigarette donations. That goes a long way in prison.
My
from
millions.
What I know.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's not bad. We still like Chappelle. Lay off a couple subjects in your stand-up. Stop being a baby.
And hit us up for legal advice next time.
And by stop being a baby, I mean we love you and please hire us to be your lawyers.
We like millions.
Yeah, we'll work for money. We know what perpetuity means.
Yeah, at the very least.
Perpetuity. Just gonna keep saying it. Perpetuity.
Forever.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Finally, we talked about Chappelle.
So thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Legally Judgy. We hope you enjoyed listening to us talk as much as we love the sound of our own voices.
If you did, please subscribe, rate, leave us a review. Also, please feel free to connect with us on our socials at Legally Judgy. Until next time, guys, thanks for coming.
Bye.